Hello everyone, today we are going to unravel one of the most haunting and chilling maritime mysteries in history, the case of the Flannan Isles Lighthouse Keepers, a story that begins in the year 1900 on a remote windswept cluster of islands in Scotland's Outer Hebrides where three men vanished, without a trace, leaving behind only unsettling clues, whispers of the sea, and endless speculation. This tale has gripped sailors, historians, and mystery seekers for more than a century, because it is not just a story of disappearance, but a puzzle that sits somewhere between fact and legend, a riddle that feels at once grounded in reality and yet touched by something otherworldly. Imagine the scene. It is December 1900. The seas are rough, the winds howl across the desolate Flannan Isles, also known as the Seven Hunters, small rocky outcrops that stand defiantly in the Atlantic Ocean, battered constantly by violent storms. Here stood the lighthouse, built only a few years earlier in 1899, a proud tower meant to guide ships safely past these dangerous waters. And inside this lonely tower lived three keepers, Thomas Marshall, James Ducat, and Donald MacArthur. Their duty was to maintain the light, keep it burning through the dark nights, and ensure that passing ships would not crash against the rocks. The job was hard, isolating, and relentless, but it was a duty they had sworn to keep for days. The seas had been wild and stormy, but then on December 15th, a ship called the Archtor noted something strange as it passed by the lighthouse. The great beam of light that should have been shining across the water was dark. The lighthouse was not functioning. This was alarming, but given the weather there was little that could be done immediately. When the Archtor reached port, it reported the situation, and on December 26th, Captain James Harvey of the Hesperus set sail to investigate. As the ship approached the island, Harvey and his men were immediately uneasy. The lighthouse stood tall against the cliffs, but there was no signal flag flying, no welcoming sign of life. When a small boat was lowered, men climbed onto the rocks. They found the landing station eerily quiet. The supply boxes were untouched, and no one came to greet them. It was as if the keepers had vanished into thin air inside the lighthouse. The search revealed even stranger details. The clock had stopped, the beds were unmade. It looked as though they had been slept in. The fire in the hearth was out cold for many days. One set of oilskins, the waterproof gear essential for surviving the violent storms, was left behind, as if one man had gone out into the fury of the elements without even his coat. The logbook added another disturbing layer. The last entries, written by Thomas Marshall, described unusually severe storms on December 12th, with notes of damage to the lighthouse equipment. Even more unsettling was the mention of one of the keepers, Donald MacArthur, described as unusually quiet, and then later as crying wet. Could have made a hardened seaman cry. Then came the final entry on December 15th. It simply reads, "Storm ended, sea calm, God is over all." But when investigators checked the surrounding areas, they discovered something deeply puzzling. On the western side of the island, a section of the landing platform had been violently damaged. Twisted railings, torn turf, ripped up boulders, displaced as though the ocean itself had risen up and smashed against the land with unimaginable power. It suggested that at least two of the men may have gone down to secure equipment against the storm and were swept away. But this theory raised troubling questions. Why would all three men leave the lighthouse at once? Why would one leave without his protective gear? And how could men so experienced make such a fatal error? Over the years, theories have multiplied. Some point to the storms, arguing that rogue waves or hurricane force winds carried the men away. Others whisper about madness, isolation, driving one of the keepers to murder before succumbing himself. Some claim they were kidnapped by foreign ships or even spies in a time when the seas were filled with secrets. Others lean toward the supernatural. Old legends speak of the islands being haunted, cursed, or visited by otherworldly forces. Sailors told tales of ghostly figures, lights in the sky, strange voices in the wind. Did something beyond explanation take the three men that night? Consider too the eerie detail of the logbook. Some researchers believe the entry about crying and strange storms do not match the weather records of that time, suggesting that either the notes were fabricated or something even stranger was happening. Could the entries have been altered to cover up what really occurred? Was there a hidden conflict among the men, or perhaps a moment of panic that spiraled out of control? The mystery deepens when we realize that no bodies were ever recovered despite searches of the surrounding waters. The Atlantic is a vast and merciless force, but usually some trace would appear: wreckage, a body washed ashore. Yet nothing was ever found. It is though the ocean swallowed the men whole, leaving no clue but silence for more than a century. Writers, poets, and even songwriters have been inspired by this disappearance, weaving it into ghost stories, ballads, and conspiracy theories. The Flannan Isles mystery has become more than a maritime tragedy. It has become folklore, a tale retold in pubs along the Scottish coast, and in the minds of those who look out at the restless sea, imagining what fate befell. Three men who were there one moment and gone the next. Perhaps the most haunting aspect is the human element. Three men with families, hopes, and duties simply erased from the world, in a place where nature and legend collide. Perhaps the storm claimed them, perhaps something darker occurred. But the truth has never been proven, and maybe that is why it endures. Some mysteries are not meant to be solved. They remain as warning stories carved into history, reminding us of the fragile line between safety and chaos, between the known and the unknown. And so when you hear the distant crash of waves, or see the solitary beam of a lighthouse cutting through the night, remember the men of the Flannan Isles. Their disappearance is not just a mystery of the sea, it is a reminder that sometimes the world holds secrets that defy explanation. Sometimes the truth is not in the facts, but in the silence that lingers long after.